This episode is brought to you by Ovnio, the social TV network. Makena Mwita, welcome to Back Cover News. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's been a very interesting week in Kenya, as we've just seen President William Ruto this week announce that he would not sign the finance bill after international outrage. What were your initial thoughts?
I saw this coming because there was a lot of pressure from the Kenyan population, especially the young people who started the movement. So I knew at some given point in time the president was going to give in to the pressure. But again, I think it's too early to celebrate because there are other instances that the president has contradicted himself. He's come out to say something and then ends up doing exactly the opposite. So I think we'll wait. There's also a lot of legalities, legal technicalities involved in that. So we can only wait for time to tell whether he actually meant what he said or he was just playing mind game on the young people of Kenya.
Right. Yeah. Kenya has a lot of debt, roughly an estimated 82 billion US dollars, which is about 123 Australian, or 123 billion Australian. What was the finance bill intended to do, and why were so many people outraged?
The finance bill was intended to raise more revenue to finance the Kenyan budget, and also some of which is going into debt. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't see accountability in government. There's no transparency. So we're being told there are debts. We don't know whether what these debts were taken to do. And if we are paying debts, there are no records to prove that this money revenue that is being raised, actually a good chunk of it is going to debt repayment. There's no any accountability and transparency in government. So people feel like they're being played, and they want the government to be more accountable to the people.
Yeah, and there has been a lot of criticism surrounding the government spending.
Yes.
For example, the First Lady, I believe, earns roughly 696 million shillings, Kenyan shillings, which is equivalent to about 5 million US or 8 million Australian. That's a lot of money for a First Lady. Why were people so frustrated with the spending of the government?
I do agree with you that the government has been very, very extravagant in its spending. It's not just spending, but also corruption. So there's a lot of money that is being wasted and stolen by government, and people close to the president. So about the First Lady, that was a budget for her office. So it was around 696 million Kenyan shillings, which Kenyans feel is a wastage of money, because what is the office of the First Lady doing in the first place? So, and why should she have a budget? So that is one among a lot of other, budgeted programs that are unconstitutional in Kenya. We've got the deputy president getting 800 million Kenyan shillings going into confidential expenditure. That is also does not make sense, because what is it that the deputy president is spending on that cannot be communicated to the public? So there've been also some money being allocated for renovation of state lodges and state house and office of the deputy president. So Kenyans feel like they're paying taxes, yes, but their money, there's no value for money. Their money is not being spent properly to meet the needs, the immediate needs, the important needs of the Kenyan population. We have got hunger, we've got drought issues, we've got health system is not working properly, education system is broken. So there are important issues that Kenyan people would like addressed, and the government instead is going into spending on luxury. And we've seen the president of Kenya, within less than 2 years, he has traveled to 68 countries, and all that comes out of those trips are debts. There's nothing that there is no And obviously he goes with a lot of people. The most recent trip he went to the US, he took a jet that cost taxpayers $2 million US. So Kenyans feel like their money is being wasted on things that do not matter to them.
Yeah, absolutely. In President Ruto's defense, a lot of this debt was inherited from his predecessor. However, a lot of he has been under a lot of pressure from the IMF to increase taxes to pay off a lot of the debt. So was this a bad idea from the get-go? How did this bill even come to pass?
So the bill comes to pass. I'll start from your last point you just made. The bill came to pass because of there is no independence of the arms of government. So the members of parliament, and we have seen them make statements in public where they are saying that they are being loyal to their president. Mm-hmm. So they are not listening to the people who sent them to represent in parliament. So there was, I do understand from credible sources that there was a lot of pressure from the president to the members of National Assembly, the MPs, to pass the bill. And there are situations where some members of parliament has come out to say that they were actually bribed to pass the bill by the president. So the president really wanted this bill to pass. So yes, he does say that he inherited a lot of debts from the previous regime. But again, remember, he was a deputy president for 10 years. So he was part of the previous regime. So if at all there are debts that he inherited, he was part of the people who accumulated the debt, because he was involved, especially the first term of the previous regime. He was actively involved in government activities and decision making. So we would also blame him for that. But again, Kenyans are asking, where are the records? Where did this money go? Tell us you took this amount of loans from here, and this is what the loans were used for. And I think this a message to IMF. I think these are some of the information they need to be getting to lend money to countries, because we have seen situations where countries have become slaves to IMF, because IMF does not demand accountability to the money that is being lent to those countries, and then it ends up being wasted and going to pockets of a few people, and then now the whole country is put into problems that they did not benefit from.
The bill was designed to increase taxes significantly on everyday items, and considering a third of Kenya's population live in poverty, you can understand why there was so much outrage. Gen Z have done a very remarkable job of galvanizing these protests and, really building momentum against this bill. How significant have these protests been, considering we've seen, 23 deaths?
It's been very, very significant and very organic, not politically motivated. In the past, we have had incidences of where most protests are being funded and inspired by opposition politicians, and we've had incident, for example, in 2017, where the president had to call the opposition leader Raila Odinga to a negotiation table, and they had a handshake, and the deal was broken, and the common people did not benefit from that deal, so it ended just with a few people benefiting from the negotiations. But now these young people are saying, we've got no leader, so there's no one to call on the table for negotiations. If you have to negotiate, you have to negotiate to all Kenyans. We need a better country, and we need accountability. We need you to fight corruption, not just by words. Show us that, prove to us that you're fighting corruption by firing ministers that are corrupt in your government, which you have powers to to fire and hire new ministers that are accountable to the people. Show us that you're prioritizing matters that matter to the Kenyan citizens, and fighting corruption and sealing all the loopholes in government spending and things like that. Because as you are aware of, a third of the Kenyan budget goes into corruption. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so here actually the finance bill was just a trigger, but there are so many other underlying issues that has been affecting the young people, And obviously they were rebelling against everyone. There was a very big kind of rebellion against the government, and everyone had their issues because this has been decades of oppression by government. It has been decades of abuse of power, corruption, and people cannot take it anymore. So I applaud the young people of Kenya for standing up for their rights, and I think this is something that is going to bear fruits in the long run. And it's good that they're being involved in politics because they are the majority. Over 80% of the Kenyan population is under the age of 35. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine, and the median age of the Kenyan population is 19.8 years old. So yeah, we are the majority, but most people don't engage in politics in the past. So now that they are actively involved, I think that's a game changer.
The president won the election 2 years ago on a platform advocating for Kenya's working poor, yet this bill goes completely against that. Is the public trust irretrievably broken?
Yeah, it's definitely. The trust is broken. I don't know how it got here because personally I'm in diaspora and I saw it coming. I don't know how the president did not know that he's losing people's trust, including his own home county where he comes from. People are rebellious and they're saying, you can't take us for granted anymore. So he came into power promising a bottom-up economy, an economy, an approach that was going to look into the affairs of the most vulnerable in the community. He was referring to, the mama mbogas are vegetable and fruit vendors. He was referring to hustlers, the common citizens of Kenya who live under $1 a day. But again, his policies have proven to care for the rich instead. So that's why I said he preaches water and drinks wine. So there has a lot of, increasing taxes does not necessarily mean there is an increase in revenue, because what you're doing is you're killing businesses. And when you kill businesses, there are people that are being employed by the businesses and they lose their jobs. So the common people suffer. And you find that the investors are not coming in because the tax policies are not predictable. You keep increasing taxes, and the country loses at large. So there are a lot of young people coming out of universities. There are no jobs, but they voted as someone who they believed that was going to change their lives, and this has not happened for the past 2 years. Instead, the cost of living is unbearable. Corruption is at its peak, so people are tired and they're saying, this government does not live up to its promises.
Yeah. We saw Kenyans rallying around the world, so not just Nairobi, we saw them in Washington, here in Melbourne, all around the world. Yeah. What does this mean for President Ruto's legacy?
He has actually gone down as the most hated president in Kenyan history, and not just Kenya, but globally, because he has refused to listen to people, and he has been very, very arrogant, and people within his circle, people close to him, his advisors, and his ministers have closed their ears. They've refused to listen to people. And obviously he has been ordering police to use force against peaceful protesters. A lot of people have died. He has shown no remorse. He does not even feel sorry for the families of the victims, people who have been injured. We have seen even on international media people being shot at with live bullets, and even medics who are helping with emergency, and even lawyers who have been going around and trying to find people who were abducted, being shot at and killed, some of them arrested. So he's obviously going down as a dictator, and this is a reputation that this is not an image he showed when he was campaigning. So I think he damaged his reputation, so it's gonna take a very long time and very tough measures within his government and himself to be able to change this kind of image that he has created by this outrage.
We saw him do a pretty extreme 180 within 24 hours this week.
Yeah.
He went from calling protesters treasonous criminals to less than 24 hours later announcing that he would not sign the bill. Was this a sincere move?
To me, it doesn't seem like it, and that's why I said he does not seem remorseful. When he came out on the night of 25th of June, just when people had been killed by the police, some of them are missing up to today, and some of them have been arrested. There were, a good number was released yesterday by the courts because of lack of any evidence or anything that they could be charged with. A lot of Kenyans in hospitals now, illegally deploying the military to take charge of the city of Nairobi, which was against the law. So it's actually, he cannot be trusted. Him just coming out and saying he has rejected the bill, again, legal experts are saying if a bill is not assented to by the president within 14 days, then that bill automatically becomes law. If the president rejects it, then he sends it back to parliament with proposals for amendments, and the parliament will either put in the amendments or vote for the bill as it is. So this is only a matter of time for us to actually tell whether President Ruto meant what he said, within the next 14 days. But for now, it's just a promise, and most of his promises have not been met. So we can't go by his words when what he made yesterday. But again, as I said, he refused to take accountability for the loss of lives, and he did not show any remorse for what the government has been doing, abductions, killings, and all that, destruction of properties. So he called all the protesters criminals, but to me that was a very bad image that he painted for himself and the country, because those people were very peaceful and the only weapon they had is placards and a Kenyan flag, but the police were under instructions to shoot and kill. So I think he's taking this thing very lightly, not with the weight and strength, weight that it serves to be taken, or the seriousness that it should take it.
As mentioned earlier, at least 23 people died during the protests, and there are calls for the president to resign. Does the president have blood on his hands, and should he step down?
That is exactly what Kenyans are demanding, for him to step down, because when he was sworn in, he sought to protect the Kenyan constitution and the right of democracy and the lives of Kenyans. When Kenyans are dying, others are being injured under his watch, then the buck stops with him. He bears the responsibility of whatever is happening. So that's why it's not stopped. Kenyans are marching today. They're gonna march against all the atrocities that have been committed by the government and the police. And they are saying, and this movement actually is not all about finance bill, as I said. There are more to it. So Kenyans are sick of corruption, overspending by government, and all this unnecessary spending and losing money to corruption, and they're saying enough is enough. So the president should not just end this with the finance bill. He should just stop and listen to the people, or if he's not able to run the country, then he should just step down and let someone else lead.
There's a lot of skepticism around the IMF and how influential the IMF has been in drafting this bill. There's been no evidence that the IMF did in fact help draft the bill, but there have been a lot of questions. What's your take?
I think the IMF did, and I would say, as a Pan-African, I would say the president is being a puppet of the West. In so many instances, we've seen him make very unnecessary and unpopular moves, including recently when he took sides between the Ukraine and Russia war, especially after visiting the US. And we have seen when this bill was going through the first reading, which is Thursday last week, we saw a number of IMF representatives sitting in parliament. Mm-hmm. So obviously there are a lot of external forces that is being involved in the Kenyan politics and financial policies and all that. And I think it's high time the president came out and told us that he's not actually our president. Maybe someone else is running the country through him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Very well said. So Gen Z were really at the forefront of these protests. They did a remarkable job with social activism. The hashtag Reject Finance Bill 2024 went viral and, really helped connect people and, build that momentum. How significant is social activism in politics?
Social and especially digital activism is not only the future, it's the now of the activism. We actually thank not just social media but also technology, smartphones and the internet, because we are able to get information instantly. Compared to decades ago when people had to wait for mainstream media to get information, and mostly this information will be one-sided and will be controlled by the government. But now young people are able to take pictures, they're able to keep records on their smartphones and share information instantly. So that has helped not only to keep and hold people accountable to their actions, but also to share information and spread a narrative and fight for justice and fight corruption and things like that. So this is the now. It's the now of activism. You can see what happened during the Black Lives Matter movement. Information was able to be shared globally, and people are rallying and protesting globally using the internet and sharing the information. So this is very significant in Kenya, and I think it will be like an inspiration to other young people in the continent to raise against their government and point out whenever they see injustice happen. And corruption mainly affects the young people. They are the ones that are suffering the decades of corruption by government, because as I said before, they are now out of universities, no employment, education system is broken, they are not some of them are not in school, so they have nothing to do. All they have is a smartphone. So whenever like someone said before that when the poor have nothing to eat, they go for the rich. So that's exactly what the young people of Kenya are doing. They're saying we have a government in place, there are no jobs, there's nothing to do, but we can see politicians living a very lavish lifestyle. We can see people around them buying expensive cars, expensive shoes, watch, and they're living they're living their lives, enjoying their lives. Their kids are abroad enjoying and having the best education. When they get sick, they are flown to India and Europe for treatment, but our healthcare system is not working. So they are raising and rebelling against the government because the government has refused to deliver services to them. So I think it's a good thing. Now I think we will very soon bury dictatorship and injustice because of technology.
Yeah. Gen Z often get a bad rap in the media. We've seen them called work shy, entitled, yet here we are with these protests. We've seen how powerful they've been in organising protests and taking a stand. Do politicians underestimate the power of Gen Z?
They do underestimate, and especially the older generation, they grew up in an era, especially in Africa, where there was a lot of dictatorship and people didn't have freedom of speech. So when they see young people speak up and stand up for their rights, they're like, maybe these are hard-headed people. But I think it's it's the culture that has been cultivated in them, that they're able to express themselves and question everything. You cannot lie to them. So this narrative that young people are entitled and all this information that we get is not true. Actually, it's the world changing, that people are able to stand up for their rights, people are able to speak their voice. You don't just control them and tell them do this and that. So it's a big difference from moving from the older generation who just were yes people to this young generation who are questioning everything. Yeah.
Very well said.
Yeah.
Makena Mwita, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Yeah. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much. Yeah.